Our Nellie, the Secretary of State's in the house. That's always fun.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
One of our top state officials whose company I enjoy more than most because she likes a good fight. And although, you know, if you remember the Ed campaign, she was just really soft and didn't make anybody upset and very teddy bearish and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? I'm going to get under her skin tonight because I just feel like doing that. How's everybody? Good? Nice to have you. Tuesday night at the Dan York State of Mind, and that's why we call it that, because you never know what you're going to get. I still got a second sweat. Do you see this?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I work out beforehand, so if I'm a little leery because I shot for a new high-level, high-def, max, whatever, HD TV, and all I could think is, why would you even look at me on one of those things, number one? And what happens when I get to Kevin? What happens when I get a second sweat too late before? You gotta
stop doing that.
I know I do. I have to stop doing that. Here's a headline. It's the subject of conversation tonight. Rhode Island becomes 9th state to enact automatic voter registration. Our Secretary of State is here. A more formal introduction. How are you, Madam Secretary?
Very well, Dan. How are you?
You watch that show?
On occasion, as a working mom, it's actually hard for me to watch much TV.
Yeah, well.
Other than say things like, you know, state of mind.
That Secretary of State and this Secretary of State are kind of different anyway, right?
Remind
everybody what the charge
duties are very different.
The charge.
So literally the Secretary of the State. So I have a lot of information about government, so if you want to find out, you know, when a meeting's happening in your state, with one of your municipal boards or commissions, you can find out on my website. We have the business registry of all the businesses. When you go to incorporate a business, you can find a roadmap on my website. And then we have the state archives, the state library, a lot of historic documents, the Royal Charter, which is a beautiful room. You need to come and see that actually at the State House. And I know that to tie it back to what you started with, elections. I am, yes, the chief state election official. I have the central voter registry, but I work in partnership with the Board of Elections and the local boards of canvassers to make sure that Rhode Island has the best election system in the country.
Which we don't.
All election systems are a work in progress.
In totality, I mean, your specific,
I think we're pretty good.
Your organizational stuff aside, we have a cultural problem still in terms of following the rules. We got too many people who think they can get away with it. It is amazing to me the kind of nonchalance that elected officials seem to have when it comes to filling out and reporting financial data and all that kind of stuff. The new headline, which we didn't put up for you, in the Journal yesterday, was that 93% are complying with the new banking. You know, you got to have a bank account. Well, duh. I mean, you want to talk about the duh law of the century? You ought to have a separate bank account for your political money? Hello.
I was so much shocked that that was not already the case. I have to say, I started with a separate bank account, but you know.
Like, you know, your joint checking account with you and the family, you're going to write your political stuff out of that? We actually had a handful of politicians that are still doing that until we put a law in that says, by the way, dummy, you can't do that. It's just, it's amazing to me. But we are the 9th state, as the headline says, now to get into this automatic thing. And at the motor vehicle, let's go back and talk about Bill Clinton and the voting rights legislation in the early 90s and the like. Was the place that you register your car part of that charge early on?
Early on, yes.
Federal
actually, what's
law.
interesting is that is actually my introduction to elections and governmental processes in Rhode Island, because I was on the motor voter task force that helped think about, okay, it used to be that you could only register to vote if you showed up at city or town hall. Well, as times changed, it became really hard to do that. You know, people have to take time out of work to go do this and all that. So during the Bill Clinton's administration, motor voter law passed. The motor voter law is how everybody calls it.
Right.
And that said that you had to be offered the opportunity to register to vote at the DMV or any other state agency that you were doing business with. So that dates back quite a ways.
But, you know, that Rhode Island now is the 9th state to actually be registering automatically at the place that you register your cars. Tells me that something broke down.
So no. What happened? No, nothing broke down. Really? Why do you jump there? No. We actually were ahead of the curve by having.
You're fight already, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. See, I told you.
Electronically, we were already transmitting. So if you went to DMV, you were offered the opportunity to register to vote, and if you did, then that information was typed in electronically and actually transmitted to my office. We were actually one of the first states to do that. Okay. What was not in place was you're already registered. and now you're just updating your driver's license because you've moved within the state, and you make the change with your driver's license. And now you're asked again, well, do you want to register to vote? Well, no, I'm already registered. Well, sometimes people didn't think about the fact that you had to say yes and then re-register to change your address. Now it's just going to automatically happen, which is much simpler. You know, the Pew Charitable Trusts did a study in I think it was 2012 or 2014, that a quarter of U.S. citizens that are registered, when they did their U.S. postal address change, thought that that would automatically change their voting address. It doesn't, because the U.S. Post Office is a totally different organization than your government and your local board of canvassers. So this law allows us to have cleaner voting lists, and getting to the point which I think you and I both, we may fight about some things, but we both agree that keeping the integrity of elections is absolutely critical.
Of course. Well, that clears a couple things up, because I was trying to figure out the other day what the actual mechanics were, and actually the way this story was spun, I think by a press that didn't do a very good job with your announcement about this automatic thing, was that it was kind of like a new process. That this was, you know, now you had an opportunity to register where, you know, at the motor vehicle, what do we call it? Department of Motor Vehicles? Registry
Division of Motor
Division
Vehicles.
of Motor Vehicles, you know, in Cranston or Westerly or Woonsocket, whatever. And I might have had a retro debate of 20 or 30 years, given that we have a federal law that actually requires states to do this anyway, and also at state agencies. So if you're, you know, if you're looking for your welfare check or whatever, I mean, all the state agencies provide voter registration. I've just always been very concerned over time, and this is where we do have a debate, that we're spoon-feeding democracy. I just think it's terrible. I think it has made a less vibrant electorate. I'm a quality versus quantity guy. You are a person who thinks that you subscribe to this stuff. You subscribe to everything that walks and talks and breathes ought to be registered to vote.
We have to have a friend. The access to the right to vote is absolutely critical.
That's not. That's a different. That's not what I'm saying. Access to the right to the vote and technical enhancements to do so, because you make a cognitive decision to register. Fine. But I think we do way too much in spoon-feeding voter registration to people who otherwise wouldn't think about it, who probably wouldn't do anything to actually examine the issues and make good decisions about candidates.
I disagree. I think that a lot of the reasons why some of these people might not be registered has to do with the complexity of their lives. And I say this now as somebody who originally, as a real democracy, you know, advocate, was, you know, at 7 in the morning, first in line to go vote. And now that I have 3 children, a husband, a job, like all sorts of responsibilities, I'm probably your last general officer. Even though I'm the chief state election official, I'm the last general officer to vote on election day, because by the time I get to my polling location back in North Kingstown, the whole day has gone away. So, you know, people's lives are complicated. And what we're trying to do here is to serve people, to have the government respond to people's needs.
I just don't think that's the entire motivation. I think
that's my motivation.
I think Democrats in general, and I'm not a Republican, but I think Democrats in general for decades now have been trying to elevate the voter registration. So the more warm bodies you get in there, the better off we are. Let me ask you this. Do you think we have a smarter electorate today than we did 30 years ago?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that particular question, but I can tell you this. We have been providing much better information to our Rhode Island electorate over the last 3 years. We redesigned the voter information guide. We've clarified the ballot. We've made a lot of advances in terms of how we interact with people through the Secretary of State's website to make it easier for people to understand. If you're stuck in line somewhere, you can go to our website and get all sorts of critical information about where you go vote, what are your questions. Elections are not a pop quiz. You can definitely avail yourself of that information.
All right. So Ken Block, a government watchdog, was here the other day, and I asked him about this registration, automatic registration. And he does a lot of tabulation and research, not just here in Rhode Island and beyond. He said this about that.
I've heard from a number of people that they were improperly registered automatically. And that's
meaning
they did something at the DMV, and as a result of having done something, they had even though they lived in Massachusetts, but they had a business in Rhode Island, they did Rhode Island DMV work, and all of a sudden were magically registered in Rhode Island when they vote in Massachusetts.
No.
Yes, yes. So,
is she aware of that?
I have indicated that this was a problematic, but there's too many. Election stuff is so complicated, and there's so many. It's really a mess. I think it's much messier. As one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world, we have a rickety election system. We really do, and we deserve much better than we're getting in this right now.
I don't think he's just talking about Rhode Island. He's talking about broadly.
I was going to say,
but
he's not talking about Rhode Island.
But no, sir, he's making a, you know, I consider that to be educated hearsay. I mean, I can't prove what he said, but do we have these mishaps still where people are cross?
I have not been notified myself about that, but I do encourage anybody who knows about somebody improperly being registered should report it to the Board of Elections. We are a nation of laws, and there are processes and penalties for doing this. Now, if it's a misunderstanding and somehow it happened, that's a different question. But there are places where you report this, and so, you know, Mr. Block saying that he hears that this has happened doesn't help us. Allegations are not, you know, that are unsubstantiated. All they do is to serve, you know, that purpose of saying like, oh my gosh, there's a problem here going on. Let's look at what we're doing and report it. If you have real evidence that there's a problem, let's address it, which is what I did when I came in.
Later in the show, he's got some. He's had this multi-state study that he's doing about voter fraud, which is different than the argument that we're making here now. I'll get your response to that. I also want to talk to our Secretary of State about what the President is doing and the Commission to investigate voter fraud. But first, let me just remind you that the Navigant Credit Union has got a wonderful program now. Speaking of technology, everything you'd ever want on your banking list will be in your app called Card Valet. Just download it and first become a member of Navigant Credit Union, meaning just open up an account, and use the Card Valet app to do everything you'd ever dream of in terms of your banking. It's not just online banking, it's now in the palm of your hand. NavigantCU.org, number NCUA. Back to the Secretary of State. Stay with us. Wait a minute, what? Well, wait, I'm changing gears here. What are you talking about? Dragon voters?
I was inviting you to be part of my team for the Dragon Voters team.
What is the Dragon Voters?
The
Chinese States here, by the way.
Chinese Dragon boats that that are raced in Pawtucket.
Right. What about
in early September? I have a team that I've put together called the Dragon Voters. And you can be a member of my team.
I thought you had some new program. This is what happens, the chatter during the break, you know, while you're doing whatever you're doing, we're having this. I thought you had like a new...
Because you're, you know, talking about exercise.
You know, anytime you say Pawtucket and voting, I go nuts, because this is when I started, back, I don't know, 18 years ago, Pawtucket was running some kind of voter registration, win a refrigerator if you registered to vote type of thing. I'm not kidding.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And that's when I got on this big kick about we should not be incentivizing people past their own civic duty to register to vote.
But in the break, you and I just agreed that automatic voter registration makes sense.
Well, given that the Motor Vehicle Department has been going through the process the entire time, that you've perfected the process with technology, makes perfect sense. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You accomplished something.
Now
right?
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Here's what Donald Trump is working on, amongst other things.
President Trump says it's not just him, but that Americans have been asking him since before the election to investigate voter fraud.
It's about the concern of so many Americans that improper voting has taken place.
But Connecticut's Secretary of State Denise Merrill tells us she's worried the commission's work could actually scare people away from the ballot box.
I think it's a very dangerous path to go down. I think you do risk suppressing a lot of people's vote.
Kansas's Secretary of State Kris Kobach, who's currently running for governor, is vice chair of the Presidential Commission. He said the commission will investigate voter registration and election security in all 50 states.
But there's never been a nationwide effort to do some sort of analysis of this scope and scale.
The commission has asked states for individuals' voter registration information, but several states have refused to turn over that data, including voters' names, partial social security numbers, and previous voting history. The commission is facing several lawsuits over concerns too much of the work is happening behind closed doors. Today's meeting was not open to the public, but was streamed live online. Vice President Pence promises the commission will be objective.
This commission has no preconceived notions or preordained results.
If that's the case, Secretary Merrill says she thinks the commission won't find much of anything.
There are occasional instances of voter fraud. They're very rare when they're actually proven.
So the Trump-Pence administration is not being genuine there when they say that they're not going in with a predisposition, because the president's been talking about voter fraud in the campaign and everything else, and was creating quite the alarm.
But voter fraud that nobody, like not even Republican secretaries of state, are vouching for. I mean, other than Secretary Kobach.
Well, the president has said a lot of things that nobody can vouch for. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, listen.
I would agree with that.
But there's a point to be made here, and others have made it as well, which is that at some juncture, all 50 states ought to get their collective, consistent act together, don't you think?
Well, you know.
And so whether Donald Trump is introducing this concept or not, it seems to me that everybody ought to get on board.
But this country's election system was actually set up individually by states. And part of the beauty in the last election cycle, why, for example, the Russians were not able to really control the elections the way they probably wanted to, is the fact that we have a decentralized election system. Now, the president put together this commission, put in charge, the vice president, but then the person who's been really leading this commission is a person that I think is very suspect. It's Secretary of State of Kansas, Kris Kobach, who has had 4 different federal lawsuits turn against him because he's been disenfranchising his own Kansas voters. So when you have somebody with that background,
in what manner?
Oh, just asking different types of information that keep people from registering. So trying to set up a Kansas voter registration process separate from the federal one, where you ask other questions that are different. And the courts have basically said, no, you can't do this way. Now,
the courts
the
are suggesting that you have to kind of stay on the platform that the feds provide.
Yeah.
It seems to me that I get each of the states' reports, I get the Electoral College, I get the concepts from early on, but it seems to me that we ought to have a consistent technology and shared information, because we have a transient society where people are moving back and forth a lot quicker than the old days.
But we have, for example, with the Electronic Registration Information Center, ERIC, a shared process through a nonprofit that's not governmentally controlled, but rather it's the members that pay into it, for example. And I'm able to check with other states that are members on voter registration. That's very different than the government coming in and saying, that they need all this information, which, by the way, Mr. Kobach's letter was very expansive, to the point where even Republican secretaries of state said, no, I'm not going to give you
what did they want?
Social Securities, driver's license numbers, all sorts of information that really, under law, you're not permitted to provide. I have always said that I will only provide that which is publicly available to you. For example, if you came to my office and asked for a voter list, I'll give you the same thing that I would give Mr. Kobach.
Which has what information on it?
The name, the address, the year of birth, the party affiliation, the voter history of that person. Not how they voted, only that they have voted.
Right.
Yeah, what elections and stuff. And
that data is sufficient to prove that people are who they are?
Yes, they are.
How?
It is. What do you mean?
Everyone else in the world is grabbing my Social Security number. Not that I want to give it to another entity.
No. The one thing that came to my office really quickly after this commission was announced was the outcry by Rhode Islanders saying, do not give the federal government all this other information, because I'm very concerned about identity theft. And so there's a very loud outcry from people about this. And so I went ahead and said, no, I'm going to make sure that we provide only what is legally required. And by the way, we did notice that we were giving full dates of birth, and we've taken month and dates and day of birth away from the data distribution, because you don't really need that level of detail to make sure that John Smith, who was born in '62, is the same as John Smith, who was born in, I'm going to date myself, 56 or whatever. And so all you need is enough information to distinguish that voter. You don't need their specific date of birth in order to make sure that you know who these people are. So I'm looking out for Rhode Islanders and making sure that their identities are kept as secure as possible within the process, that this is an open system. And we want to make sure that there is transparency in the way our government operates.
All right, so we'll answer the question. Is there voter fraud, yes or no, when we come back? All right, welcome back. Kev, we should probably just play that other, just to make the secretary happy, Ken Block assertion, because he had a major report, a multi-state report that he was working on that he said he couldn't finish, but he was suggesting this was going on.
I think that the very uneven treatment that different states give to this crucial data needs to be even. And I think there should be a definition on what data should be public access, and there should be a reasonable cost associated with the data. No state, Massachusetts in particular, no state should have the ability to withhold this unnecessarily from everybody, and that's what's happening.
All right, so he suggesting that from state to state, it's very difficult to get the data that he was looking at with a nonprofit he was working with in order to be able to investigate this voter fraud stuff. He was talking about thousands of voter fraud cases that he found over the course of multiple states. You've read his report.
Yes.
And
I found it full of problems.
Like?
I mean, just at one point he says, we don't have social security numbers, but then he said, oh no, but we did match them, and he used some commercial database, which is really a bad way to match data.
So you would suggest that his process of investigation is faulty?
I do, actually. Right. And I think some of the conclusions that he came to in the report are faulty.
Like,
that there's some sort of incredible issue here because we don't have some driver's licenses or last 4 digits of a social security number of a portion of our voter registration people. The truth is that requirement was only mandatory for people who were registered by third-party groups or sent their voter registration through the mail, and it was started in 2002. So when did you register originally to vote? Well before 2002, probably.
Well, when I came to Rhode Island in 2000.
So, all right, so 2000. So you would have registered to vote and not been required to give either last 4 digits of your social or your driver's license number,
right? Because
that wasn't the law at that time. So, but in his report, he has this allegation that somehow this is a horrible process, that you have all these unidentified people in the voter rolls. That's not the case. These are real people that have voted, that are part of our system, that
all right,
there's not an issue with.
So answer the big question. You got a minute and a half or so to do so. Is there such a thing called voter fraud?
I think that the conversation on voter fraud is grossly over-exaggerated. We have a system of laws and penalties, and over the last decade or so, I think there's been 4 cases that have actually made it through, and it had to do with people voting from addresses that were their business address, not their residential address. That was what it was. What I can tell you for sure is that there are hundreds of thousands of people who don't vote for whatever reason, whether it's because it's on a work day, because they can't get to the voting booth. And I want to make sure that our systems make it as easy as possible.
What is our progress toward the weekend stuff? What are we doing in voting on the weekend? Are we moving toward that?
Early in person. I did have a bill in this legislative session. It didn't happen, but that happens sometimes with proposed legislation.
We have a very liberal approach to absentee voting.
We have mail ballots that you can ask for 21 days before an election, and within 20 days of an election, you can do an emergency mail ballot, which is basically a form of early in-person voting, albeit, we call it emergency mail ballot. I just wanted to clarify for people that that's really what it is.
But the term emergency, while that's the illegal term in Rhode Island, it's not really.
It's not.
You don't have to.
You don't have to have a real emergency, like with a doctor's note, which is what people think of when they hear that term. So I wanted to, as I've said, make it clear for people, make it easy for people to understand that this is a right that they have.
You having fun?
I'm having a blast.
You are running for re-election?
I am.
You are?
I am.
Did you just announce?
No.
Whatever.
No, an announcement involves balloons and a band and all that kind of stuff. I'll invite you to that one.
Your beautiful daughter's here.
Yeah,
half the family's here, sort of. Mom's running, by the way, in case you're wondering. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks.
All right. Final word when I come back, Steve. We're going to take a little break for the rest of the week, a little summertime type of thing. The executive editor of the Providence Journal, Alan Rosenberg's conversation with us will be revisited tomorrow, and other good stuff over the course of the week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the radio at 3 on WPRO.